Greetings! I, Zuella Quizon, along with my two other groupmates, Keshia Gutierrez and Krizhia de Cruz, will be reporting for the first four modules of Unit 1. This report will be focusing about words and concepts, and I will be reporting for the first module. Words are made up of letters. It is said to be the simplest unit of communication, because without words we cannot communicate. Without words, we cannot form concepts. Without concepts, we cannot form arguable claims, and knowledge is just no knowledge at all. Thus, this is why we call words or we label words as the simplest unit of communication. Concepts, on the other hand, are not the same as words. Well, they are sometimes interchanged or labeled as the same thing, but the truth is they're not. Well, to be fair, words can be used to express or symbolize concepts, but again, they are not the concept themselves. In an easier end note, you can think of it that words are made up of letters, while concepts are made up of ideas. Well, now let's talk about how concepts are formed. Using the words of John Locke, he is a well-known British empiricist. Every existing things in this world are particulars. Take a handful of sand, for example. Every grain of sand is a particular. Now, I want you to name all of them. Every single particular, every bit of the sand or every grain of the sand. Give them a proper name. Impossible, right? Well, even if it is possible, it is nonsense and just a waste of time. This is where general terms are invented through the process of abstraction. Every single particular cannot have a proper name, which is why we generate or we get a general idea. We observe a common characteristic from every single particular to derive a general term. Now let's go back to the handful of sand that we used as an example a while ago. Now observe the characteristic that can be seen in every particular. Let's take the sand or the sticker, picture sand in the given or in the shown presentation right now. It can be the color or the texture. Now we can call the sand or the handful of sand as a yellow sand now, or a brown sand. It is to refer the same handful of sand that we discussed a while ago. This time we just use a general term to give a proper idea about it. Next are terms. Terms are a word or a group of words that we use to describe a concept. Terms can either be simple or complex. Simple terms having or created by a single word. This is as basic as cat, dog, apple, while complex terms are made up of group of words. Some of the given example in this module are the morning star and the present king of France. Now we are going to end this first module by saying words and concepts are the basic unit of critical thinking. This is because without concepts and the ability to form concepts using words, there will be no human knowledge at all. There will be no knowledge in our society.
So now that you have a more thorough understanding of the distinction between a word and a concept, let us now move forward to distinguishing the difference between the extension and intension of a concept. So usually when we say an extension of a concept, it is the general members of the domain of the concept. So basically it includes everything, which are the members, that belong to a concept without taking note of other characteristics that may slightly set them apart from each other. An example of this would be that all kinds of cars, no matter how similar or different the model or the structure may be, still fall under the umbrella term or concept cars. So again, if I'm going to simplify it, the term or the concept car is a set of all cars in the world. An intention of a concept is the specification of the trait or sets of traits, characteristics, or even function that are shared by the members. One way that I can simplify this is that you may think of it as a textbook definition of a term. So a good example of this is that a car is a four-wheeled road vehicle powered by an engine and is able to carry a small number of people. So if the intention becomes very precise and clearly defined, it becomes an essential property. So an essential property means that the possession of a single trait is the necessary and sufficient condition to qualify one to be a member of the extension of the concept. So basically, if I ask, what specific trait does a car have that immediately sets them apart from other land vehicles? I feel like the first thing that would probably come to your mind is that a car has four wheels. The four wheels, that's the essential property of a car. It's a thing in philosophy called essentialism, in which it is the belief that for a concept to be meaningful, the intention of the concept should be limited to an essential property only. This basically means that a concept must share a fundamental characteristic in order to be classified as such. However, Wittgenstein challenges essentialism by citing games as an example. He suggests that if you look closely at the different games that we have, there is not an essential property that holds them together. So if we stop and think about it, what exactly do all games have in common? So if we say that all of them have rules and regulations, it might be a bit too vague. I feel like if I mention the phrase rules and regulations, most would think of something law-related, not games. Okay? How about the instrument that you play with? Isn't there usually a role? There are games such as chess and races that do not use them. So as you can see, there are as many similarities as there are differences. There is no clear connection between them. As aforementioned, the concept games are a complicated network of similarities overlapping and crisscrossing. Sometimes overall similarities and sometimes similarities of the tiniest of details. Basically a multifarious or diversified relationship. This may be called family resemblance. So family resemblance, the notion of family resemblance is that a concept can be classified using a variety of overlapping similarities, rather than a single essential property. A good example of this already is the example games that Wittgenstein had already used. And these family resemblances may not be distributed evenly throughout the members of a concept.
We are now heading to the Module 3, which is entitled Using the Same Language. First is the meaning of a word. When Ludwig Wittgenstein is asked about the meaning of a word, this is his reply. For a large class of cases, though not for all, in which we employ the word meaning, it can be defined thus: the meaning of a word is its use in the language. You are all familiar with the numerous ways of using words. It can serve as the name for person, place, or thing. It can express demand or even ask a question. This idea of the numerous ways in which words are used, all these uses are meaningful for Wittgenstein. So, how do you determine the meaning of a word? According to Wittgenstein, to understand the meaning of a word is to understand how is it used in a given language game. To share meanings or to hold the meaning of a word in common is to share a language game. Basically, a language game is a concept created by Wittgenstein. It is a behavioral setting that gives language utterances meaning. It ties language to shared experiences. To easily understand the language game, look at the picture below. You can see a hand. Now, consider the various uses of the word hand. It can be used in the phrases like, give him or her a helping hand, or give her a hand with the luggage. You can also use it as, please hand me the hammer. In that examples, you can see how the word hand is used in different uses and meanings. Next is ambiguous and vague. A word can be conventional when the words are used in more or less the same way. For example, father, mother, sister, and brother. Conventional because the same use of the word became integrated in the numerous language games. In some cases, a word may acquire many different uses in different language games. Thus, it becomes ambiguous. Ambiguous are those words with more than one meaning. But when the word is used so loosely, it becomes vague. Vague is those words that are unclear and not clearly expressed. Now for the useless controversies. Many controversies in our everyday life turn out to be pointless. Why? Because people often utter the same word but they are using it in different ways. And what is not right is they are not informing each other that about the use of their words. Because if they only inform each other about the use of their word, then they would probably realize that there was no disagreement to begin with. But at other times, uttering the same word can lead to purely verbal agreement. Best example in philosophy is found in theological discussion where God is often uttered. But this is purely verbal agreement, since on closer examination, the term is found to be used differently by different practitioners. In fact, they are playing different language games, but they do not recognize this fact. So, how will you avoid these useless controversies? You can avoid it by applying this rule. What is the rule? There is a cardinal rule for critical thinkers that is invoked by philosophers. This is you must never take part in any discussion or verbal dispute in any subject matter with anyone unless you are sure that both of you are using the same word in the same way. This is the best way to avoid useless controversy and even misunderstanding. But how will you determine if you are using the same word in the same way? By simply asking these two questions. First, what do you mean by that? Second, in what way are you using the word? So, by the use of a word, it means the information about the intention and extension of the term. You should not be satisfied with any answer unless you are provided with a clear statement of intention and also given some typical samples about the extension of the concept. The answer to these questions will reveal whether you are using the same word in the same way or not. So always remember the cardinal rule and these two questions so that you can avoid useless controversy and even misunderstanding. Moving forward to Module 4, this is the classification of concepts. So this module will provide us the different types of concept that is recognized by epistemologists as well as philosophers in language. We will distinguish the 7 main categories of concepts, namely empirical, theoretical, dispositional, analytic, evaluative, fictitious, and metaphysical. To start with, this is the empirical concept. The keyword for this concept is tangible and visible. They say that this is the easiest to explain and understand. Look at the table and chairs. If the members are observable like how the table and chairs are observable, then it is an empirical concept because the members exist in the space and time, plus traits, characteristics, and functions of the members are observable in the same way, tangible and visible. Second is theoretical. In this concept, these are entities that cannot readily be observed to exist in space and time by unaided senses. But there are entities that are observable by using very powerful sensory extending devices. Like what you are seeing in the picture, it is an electron microscope. It is an example of sensory extending device because it is used for observing microuniverse like germs and viruses. So remember that theoretical cannot readily be observed or some are observable through the use of sensory extending device.
A dispositional concept is a concept that does not have a directly observable trait. It, it may use a device and or operation in order to constitute its definition. So a good example of this is malleability. You cannot exactly look at an object that is foreign to you and immediately think, oh, that is valuable material. You have to use physical force whether by using an instrument, most likely a hammer, or just by your bare hands if you're strong enough, in order to fully prove that something is indeed malleable. An analytic concept has members that cannot be found in the real world. They are not tangible nor visible. These members are conceptual entities and as such are creations of our minds. So an example of this may be the concept of numbers, wherein the numbers 1, 2, 3, and so on to infinity are all abstract concepts. So these are basically formal sciences like logic, geometry, and mathematics. However, these analytic concepts can also be in the form of emotions, such as love. So basically, you can feel that concept, you know that it's there, and you're not a crazy person, and other people can see it too, in a more figurative way, if they look hard enough. Evaluative concepts are judgments of the worth or value of a person, act, behavior, event, or place. So these concepts cover a whole range of other concepts, usually moral, aesthetic, and religious. So concepts like good or bad, right or wrong, moral or immoral fall under the moral category. Beauty and ugliness are under aesthetic. An example of religious ones are heaven and hell, and these evaluative concepts can also include legal concepts such as guilty or not guilty.
The next type of concept is fictitious. Like the word fiction, it is purely imaginary. It provides a great source of entertainment, just like how we enjoy series of films under the genre of fantasy and or science fiction. It is the total opposite of empirical concept, but ironically, some people think they share the same meaning or are the same thing. Take Filipinos for example. In our culture, some have an undoubtedly belief that tikbalang, lumusupunso, and ghosts exist when they actually don't. This is why they mix empirical concept with fictitious concept. Now we move on to metaphysical concept. Metaphysical or metaphysics is a broad topic in philosophy. It tackles about different branches that talks or gives point to reality and existence. One concept under metaphysical that is given point in the module is the concept of substance. It talks about God, mind, and matter. Now we will focus on the mind. Mind is something that we really believe in. Even though it is something invisible, it is something intangible, it is immaterial, indivisible, we know for sure that, or we believe for sure, that it coexists with our body. It is an entity that is fundamental in our knowledge or within us. Another concept under metaphysical is the concept of the absolute. The absolute, or the concept of the absolute, is described as the totality of our minds, the past, the present, and the future. Thus, we believe in one reality, which is the absolute. With all of these concepts, you may ask, is there a way to know if this concept should be labeled as this concept or as this specific concept? Here, we introduce the intra-intersubjectivity test. The test is used to determine the status or type of concept that we are talking about, be it if it's empirical, abstract, or fictitious. Let's take an angel for example. You can see an angel. It is tangible to you. You can hear it when it makes sounds, smell it, or even taste it. You can reform or put it on a different place. So, therefore, it passes the intra-subjectivity test. However, even with all of the efforts you do to teach someone to see the angel that you can see, they cannot do so. They do not see it, they can't touch it, nor smell or taste it. Therefore, it doesn't pass the inter-subjectivity test. Be oriented that for a concept to be empirical, it should pass both of the tests. In this scenario, the intersubjectivity test was failed to be passed, which is why we cannot say that this concept is under the empirical one. One test that can also tend to evaluate concepts that are not observable without the help of sensory extending apparatuses, just like microscopes. This is what we call the intra-intersubjectivity consensus. We can use Pluto as an example. For more than 70 years, we are taught, or the humanity know or labeled Pluto as a planet, But now, that idea or that concept is demoted, and we can say that Pluto is just an asteroid. With this, we can say that empirical claims can always be changed. They cannot be fixed and are always ready for a change. This is where our report ends. I hope that we were able to give you a good look about concepts and words. This is the first four module of Unit 1. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you guys in class soon. Bye-bye.